You've been walking for hours, and it's not even lunchtime yet. You wipe the sweat from your forehead and take a sip from your nearly empty water bottle. Your body is worn out, but somehow, you also feel more resilient than ever. Just as the heat of the July sun starts to feel unbearable, the outline of a village comes into view. That means, finally, a break for your weary feet. Fresh water, food, and camaraderie. People embark upon pilgrimages for a lot of different reasons. Some for emotional healing, others to mark big transitions in life. My guest today wanted to get to know his son on a more personal level. Actor and writer Andrew McCarthy has walked the famous Camino de Santiago de Compostela not just once, but twice. In his most recent travel memoir, Walking with Sam, a father, a son, and 500 miles across Spain, he shares the heartfelt story of his most recent journey. Recorded live at the Dallas Travel Show, this conversation covers a lot of ground, from what to pack, to the experience of walking hundreds of miles, to the emotional journey that inevitably unfolds. This episode has it all. Welcome to the show, Andrew McCarthy. I'm so glad you're here.
Good to be here.
Let's start by talking about what is a pilgrimage and what makes a particular route qualify as a pilgrimage.
I suppose pilgrimage technically is a journey to a sacred place, but I think it's grown to mean our journey of life or anywhere that's special to you. Like last week, I wanted to go see the Roy Orbison Museum in Wink, Texas, this tiny town. It was about 1,000 miles from me. And I said, I'm making a pilgrimage to Wink because it was an important place for me to go to because I always loved Roy Orbison. So I think it just has come to mean that somewhere that we quest toward it, that it has some higher import to us.
Specifically with the Camino, that started out very much as a religious pilgrimage, which I guess most pilgrimages were initially that.
No, I think they still are. Technically, that one particularly started in, the 8th century. Catholic Church just decided that the bones of the Apostle St. James had been discovered in the farther and westernmost reach of the Iberian Peninsula, and anybody who marched there would get half their time in purgatory knocked off. And,
how convenient.
It's a good deal, right?
Yeah, that's a great deal.
But I really think what it was about, honestly, was real estate, because Islam had taken over Spain at that point, and the Catholic Church wanted the real estate back. So they said, while you're marching across Spain to get your soul purged and cleansed, kick out the damn Moors. So it was about the Christian reconquest of Spain. It started the Crusades and the Knights Templar and all this good, bloody, gory history. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Catholic Church since then has really walked back the claims that St. James is in Santiago. And then it fell out of favor for centuries because they got Spain back, so they stopped telling people to go there. And then just in the early mid-20th century, it really made a real renaissance, largely due to one priest setting up and reestablishing the route. And then the Spanish Tourism Bureau realized, oh my gosh, this is a good kind of thing. It can revitalize the north of Spain, which was really dying. All these villages along the way were just withering on the vine. All the young people go to the city for opportunity, and it was left with just old widows. These first time I walked the Camino almost 30 years ago, all these villages were dying. They were just these little old ladies in black dresses. Their husbands died 30 years ago, but they're still wearing black, and they're sweeping off their stoop, and that's what the village life was, But now, since the first time I walked it, it's become so much more popular again. These small towns are reborn because they're serving the Camino now.
Do you have any idea how many people walk the Camino every year?
Now, up to almost 500,000 people walk it.
Why do you think it's popular now?
Well, it's just an extraordinary life-changing journey, for one. I mean, it changed my life twice when I did it. And I never met anybody who didn't have that experience of it. It's a cheap holiday, particularly for, young people. They could spend a month on the hoof. And I think more and more people have kind of got into the simplicity of walking and the benefits of that. And older people, younger people. A lot of school teachers do it because they've got the time in the summer. And it's just word of mouth, I think. People come back and they go, oh my God, this changed my life.
You said you did it 30 years ago.
Almost, yeah.
What was it that made you do it then?
Yeah, I was at a point in my life where I think I just was a bit lost without even really knowing that or being aware of it. And I stumbled upon a book by a guy named Jack Hitt called Off the Road about the pilgrimage he took when he walked across Spain. And I always mention Jack's name because I think books change lives, and his book changed my life. It's a wonderful thing about books. People we don't know, we can have such a profound connection with. And something in his journey really spoke to me. And so within a week, I was walking across Spain. I mean, I read it and said, I'm doing that. And I went. And
within a week, you just up and went.
Yeah. And I mean, this was the very early 90s. There was no internet. I called up Jack in the back of the book. He said he worked at Harper's Magazine because I'd never heard of the Camino de Santiago. I knew no one who'd done it. So I called him up at the magazine and said, Jack, you don't know me, but I read your book. And he's like, you've read my book? He was thrilled. And I know the feeling. And so anyhow, he told me about it and what to do. And so off I went. And I hated it at first. Absolutely hated it. It was miserable. I was lonely. I didn't know what I was doing there. I had terrible blisters. It was a miserable trip. And then I had sort of a transformative experience right in the middle that changed everything.
Because you kind of dropped everything and went, do you feel like you maybe weren't prepared at all that first time?
I think that the biggest mistake anyone can make is over-preparing for the Camino. It's walking. We all walk, luckily, most of us, every day. It's just incremental and it builds upon itself. You don't have to walk and train and carry backpacks around the block for 2 months to get in. You just don't need to do that. If it makes you feel better and more relaxed and calmer, sure, go for it. But it's just not necessary. This time when I went with Sam, we went on about 3 or 4 days' notice as well. I would never have gotten my 19-year-old son to walk with me, but his girlfriend had just dumped him, so he was moping around the house.
I love that thread in the book because everybody has been in a breakup that just blows up your world.
Yeah.
And you feel like all you can do is mope.
Yeah, and he was. And I said, hey, Sammy, and I'd always wanted to walk the Camino again, and I'd love to take on with my son. And I talked about it their whole lives. And I said, hey, you want to walk across the Camino? And he was like, yeah, whatever. And I literally went into the other room, bought 2 tickets, and 2 days later we were there. Because I knew in a few days he'd recover and change his mind and not want to go. And so for 3 weeks of the month, I heard him complain and moan and cry about his ex-girlfriend until he walked himself right out of his heartbreak and into himself. I do think it's just the kind of thing you just go, because I think fear will stop people more than anything else, like I said. So without having too much time to think about it, we're better off. We don't need hiking boots. You don't need tents. You're
just
a pair
walking.
of day walking shoes, because it's not like you're hiking the Appalachian Trail where you're carrying your world on your back and you're alone and you need big hiking boots. You're in society most of the time. You pass a village every couple hours. You can always eat. You can always find a place to sleep. It's as much a cultural thing as it is a physical thing.
So maybe we overcomplicate the whole idea of that and the idea of the Camino by over-preparing, because 500 miles sounds like something you need hiking boots for.
The first time I went, I bought those big, heavy leather hiking boots, and 2 weeks into it, after such bad blisters, I threw them out and got sneakers. But you think about the early pilgrims back in, the 9th, 10th century, they didn't carry anything with them because they didn't want to be carrying all that stuff. They had a gourd on their walking stick they filled with water, and they ate along the way. But we're also, I think, afraid to not have all our stuff with us.
Yeah.
Just makes us feel safer.
Yeah.
And one of the great things that the Camino does, it unburdens you literally and spiritually, emotionally. There are places along the way where you see just discarded things, clothes and tents and shoes along the path because people realize, I don't need this anymore. And it's literally a discarding and a metaphorical one as well that happens along the way.
And do you have to do, you think, the whole thing to get that?
Well, here's my soapbox on that one. Most people only walk the last bit of it because they say they don't have time, which certainly, or they are afraid of the whole walk. But I would implore anyone who can fight for the time, the longer you walk, the better. Because there's something, 5 days is, that's a nice long walk. That's just enough to get sore and get blisters. But walking for a month, it wears you down and then it builds you back up. And there's something in the inexorable nextness and the next and the next and the next and the rhythm of the walking over time that can't be substituted. It's where the gold is.
You're going to make me do this walk, and I'm going to be so mad at you.
For the first week, you'll be cursing me.
Yes.
And then you just stay with it and you'll be like, oh my God, somewhere along the way, like Sam said when we were walking. On day 2, he said, Dad, what is the point of this effing walk? And, he didn't say effing, right? And on the last day, he said to me, Dad, it's the only 10 out of 10 thing I've ever done in my life.
Yes.
And
you're going to make me cry all over again.
It's the best thing I've ever done twice.
Frequent flyers might want to consider one of 2 government-run trusted traveler programs that can take the hassle out of airport security screenings. For both TSA PreCheck and Global Entry, federal agencies run background checks on applicants and issue known traveler numbers to those who are deemed low risk. Domestic travelers with TSA PreCheck get to use shorter lines at checkpoints, keep their shoes on, and leave liquids and electronics in their bags at more than 200 U.S. airports. It costs $78 and is valid for 5 years. Global Entry comes with all those perks, Plus, it allows international travelers to bypass the usual passport control lines when they re-enter the US. It costs $100. Like TSA PreCheck, global entry privileges are valid for 5 years before you need to renew. Application processing times for global entry can be significant. Once pre-approved, Globetrotters can interview at enrollment centers around the US or at dozens of airports when they re-enter the US.
How would you say that it strengthened your relationship with Sammy? He was 19 or 20 at the time?
19. He was 19 at the time, and he was just sort of going out into the world on his own. And my relationship ended with my dad kind of the minute I left home at 17. With all my heart, I didn't want that to happen with my son. So, our relationship had to transition from, parent to submissive or rebellious child to adults, and I had no template for that in my life with my dad. And so I thought I would love to find a way to establish that friendship on stronger ground with my son and on equal footing. And what better way than to just go walk beside him, step for step. And anyway, I started out very much as the parent in it, getting all our arrangements, doing everything. And by the end, I'm like, he's helping me. It was incremental and invisible. A couple of weeks ago, he called me up and he said, "Dad, you got 7 minutes?" I'm like, "Yeah, go."
Oh.
And he just wanted my advice to bounce something off me. And he didn't really want my advice. He just wanted to talk and him to go, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, okay. And I don't think that call would have happened if we didn't walk the Camino. I had the ultimate luxury that you have with an adult child, which is the luxury of time when we were walking,
Yeah.
And I realized, and he was working through a lot, like we said earlier, with his breakup from his girlfriend. So he would just talk every day for hours and hours about his girlfriend. And I would just sit there and listen. And I'd realize, I don't have to have the answers. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to solve this the way us parents always think we do. Got to make it better for our kids.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I didn't have 10 minutes with him. I had every day, all day, which drove me crazy too. But I came to realize you just don't need to know, just walk beside him. And I also knew that the Camino would abide and resolve things better than I could. Having had that happen in my life, I knew that just be there with him, let the Camino do its work.
And it did.
And it did. It's interesting because you think, oh, isn't it boring? Sam said, this is going to be so boring. One thing you never are is bored. All you're doing is walking and finding food and going to a village to sleep. And the next day you do it again. And you're never, ever bored. You're tired, you're frustrated, you're thrilled, you're happy, you have insights and all this kind of stuff. But what you aren't is bored. Yeah, you get your money's worth. And it's a cheap holiday, that's for sure.
I was going to say, which costs nothing, right? Other than getting there and eating and sleeping?
Eating and sleeping, and you can stay in these albergues, which are like these dormitories that initially the churches set up along the way. In the early days, these villages all sprung up about a day's walk from each other. That's where the pilgrims would walk, and then in 12, 15 miles, they'd need another place to sleep. So villages sprung up, and churches were there. And then the churches opened like dormitories where pilgrims could come sleep. They still exist. So you can pay a few euro a night if you want to sleep in the top bunk and have people snoring all night long. And it's a great sense of community there, because there are people from all over the world doing it, and all walks of life, and it's a great equalizer. Full disclosure, on this time, I'm way too old to be sleeping on the top bunk and having some guy step on me. Most nights we would stay in these little inns and little family-run pensiones and stuff. But often I'd say about, a third the time we stayed in the albergues. And, that's where you meet the people. That's where the camaraderie happens. It's something you want to be a part of. Because that's one of the things about the community. You can be as alone as you want, or there's a great community in it.
Speaking of the community, there were characters that popped up throughout your journey. At the beginning of the journey, it was kind of just you two. And then the people became more of a part of the story as you went along.
Very much. You start meeting people along the way. They're all going the same place and the same thing. And you have your little pod, basically. If you take a rest for a couple days, it'll be a whole new group of people coming in. So we would walk, and we eventually met these folks who every evening we'd have dinner with and, have laughs with. Sometimes we walked with them, sometimes we didn't. But you all knew where you were going, and you all knew that there's one little town square and this thing. And there are 3 restaurants, and there's everybody at that one. It was a wonderful thing, that sense of community.
So if somebody's thinking about doing it, I'm not saying I'm going to do it, I'm just thinking about it. What are the deciding factors, weather-wise?
Summer is hot and the most crowded, July and August. I walked it the first time in July, this time in August. But they were fantastic, though. They were fantastic to walk in the sheer heat, because also you start then very early in the morning and you're in the village by the afternoon. It shuts down a lot in the winter. You got to be pretty hardy to do in the winter. It gets cold in northern Spain in the winter.
Do you have any other pilgrimages that you would consider doing?
I would like to walk the Camino again one more time. I think there's something about going back to a place. The Camino has several routes. And I walked the same one twice, which was the main one, the Camino Frances. And if I did it again, I would walk the same one again because there's something about seeing where we are in our own journey by revisiting a place. You know, going back 25 years later, it reflected back to me where I was at that point in my life. Memory's a funny thing. I thought I remembered everything, and I remembered very, very little of it. So much of it seemed brand new to me. But I do love walking more and more the older I get. And I used to think it was the slowest way to get anywhere, and now I kind of have come to see it as the main event.
In your book, you have this quote, "Solvitur ambulando." Am I saying that right? From St. Augustine.
Walking. Yeah.
Everything is solved by walking.
Yeah.
You must feel that way?
Absolutely. I think there are all these great philosophers that have talked for centuries about the power of walking. It's the rhythm we were meant to move at. And there's something about getting the body and mind in sync, and it just burns through anxieties. One of them said, if you have a problem, go for a walk. If you still have a problem, go for another walk. Creative people, writers and things have talked forever about how they went for a walk, and oh my God, it came to them. The Camino's that times 1,000. I find walking really, obviously all the physical benefits that everyone always talks about, but I think the emotional, spiritual effects of walking are much more profound.
Do you think your two littler kids would want to do it someday? Are they into it?
My 17-year-old daughter said, can we just go to Paris?
Okay, I like her.
And,
I like that.
And my 10-year-old said, we're going to do it when I'm 14, Dad.
Aw.
I'd be thrilled, be honored to.
That would be incredible to do it with another kid and see their growth.
And Sam said he'd walk it with us if we did it again. Sam walked it again.
Goodness.
A second time. He walked it last year. He walked the Camino again.
I think everyone I know who's done it has done it multiple times. It's that powerful. And
I think it just comes along at a time in your life. Like, over those 25, 28 years between the first and second time I did it, I said, I'll go back and do the Camino again someday. It was just a vague thing. But then when it came up again in my life, it just came up strong. It's like, let's go. And I had a friend of mine in his 50s. He lost his big, important job, and he was absolutely lost and crushed. I told him to go walk the Camino, and he's like, you out of your mind? I need a job, not to go walking. He went walking, and he came back profoundly affected, and he got a great job. Anytime, I think, if you're in a transition moment in life, the Camino is a very viable option.
I think that's very good advice. If you are in some kind of transition, you have to make some kind of decision, like something big is coming. Walk it off.
And even walk it off. Yeah, well put. And, walk into it.
Yeah.
You do. You walk it off first, and then you walk into it.
When you visually saw Sam grow in this month, like you saw an evolution take place in him and the learning, that had to be very rewarding as a dad to say it worked for me 30 years ago, and I hope it would work for him, and it did. He walked right out of that kind of a new guy.
Yeah.
With a new perspective.
You're going to make me cry. Yeah, I mean, you said it. That's exactly what happened. And it was a privilege to walk alongside him while he did that. I didn't do anything. That's the thing I learned. I don't have to do anything. Just be beside him while he does it. And that was profound. If I could carry that into the rest of my life, it was a profound thing. Santiago de Compostela is about 50 miles from the coast, and that's where the pilgrimage ends. But a lot of pilgrims feel the urge to walk to the sea, 50 miles beyond, to a place called Finisterre, which is technically not part of the pilgrimage, but a lot of people do go there. And I had no desire to do that. I had no need to do that. But Sam, once he learned about it, said, I'm going to walk to Finisterre, Dad. And to sort of hug him at the trailhead as he walked those last 3 days on his own, I mean, I was crying. That was a profound feeling. I mean, that's all us parents ever want, is for our children to go beyond us, And he did it literally in that case.
He really did.
And he got bragging rights. He said to people, my dad walked across most of Spain. I walked across all of Spain,
It's so perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect for him. And it really was a great ending to the book, because I think as parents, that's what you want for your kids. You want to take them as far as you can take them, and to trust that they can get to the end of whatever their journey is.
And traveling and going on journeys is a very different thing. And it often isn't even about fun or anything like that. Although the Camino is quite fun at times, but it's profound, which is better than fun. And, I think a change is better than a rest.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
We think we need to go sit down by the pool, but what we really need is to just get our mind somewhere else, get our body moving, and off we go. I think I'm exhausted, but really I'm just imploding. And I need to just sort of turn that focus out.
You need to walk.
Yeah.
Really.
Walk.
It was a really sweet journey. I think anybody who has a kiddo, anybody who likes travel will enjoy this, because it was a really cool perspective. And I'm glad you shared it. And I'm glad I read your book.
Thanks.
And everyone should. Andrew McCarthy, thank you for joining us. And thank you, our listeners, for being with us. If you're planning a trip, be sure to connect with a AAA travel advisor. Check out AAA.com/travel or visit your local branch. This podcast is a production of Auto Club Enterprises. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a review. I'm Angie Orth. Thank you for traveling with AAA.